question, how many M.2 NVMe drives can we have in the Thunderbolt external enclosure? We've seen products for 2 M.2 NVMe drives in an enclosure. We've seen products for 4 M.2 NVMe drives in an enclosure. And I'll include those in the description for those that want to go ahead and cut to the chase. But now we have a new one that can either do 12 or 24, and that's wicked. And this is the iodyne Pro Data. New product, new company, iodyne company out of California. Looking at the technical specifications for the people of this company, I'll just say, wow. This is the product. It's about the size of a laptop. And again, this is a guided tour. And what I've been able to ascertain from looking at this, the first version will have 12 drives in it. Now, because this is going to be Thunderbolt 3, and I'm going to go through some of the specs, we'll read all about that. And some of the information I've had to pull and glean, because not everything's in one place. You get bits and pieces. 12 M.2 NVMe drives in one enclosure. Custom enclosure. It talks about having active cooling. Active cooling implies a fan, and I did see the word fan in one place. And it also talks about they support the right to repair. They support 1 terabyte. They support 2 terabyte drives. What I want to know is, will this thing support an 8 terabyte drive? Can you imagine, if we look at the what, why, and how of this, that for a project, for a purpose-built storage solution, if we could have 8 M.2 NVMe drives, after all, it's PCI Express 3, which is 4 lanes. You can connect 2 computers for multipath, and you can connect 4 computers in a work group so everybody can share. This thing has 4 pairs of Thunderbolt ports, so 2, 4, 6, 8. And some of the things that they talk about for this first version are very Mac-centric. But they are also now, they claim in beta testing, because the first product, nobody has this yet. The first product is supposed to ship right after the first of the year. This is the end of the year, so the time you see this, it should be available. Okay, all we can do right now is look at the specs and see how this meets our needs for what we might want to do going down that path. And for M.2 NVMe, this is pretty wicked. I'm excited about the technology. I know there's a PLX chip in there. They talk about system on a chip. I'll include all the links, go through everything, and anybody that's got any documentation, any press releases that you read, I'll put a couple up. They've gone through the press kit, and it's all the same stuff. So everything we talk about is going to be what I've read as I look at that information. Okay, system on a chip. There's a PLX chip in there because there's something doing the lane switching for the upstream and the downstream. And if that first one is going to be about the size of a laptop, that means it'll fit in the case about the size of a laptop. And the device, working with a desktop or a laptop, you can lay it horizontally just like a laptop, or they've got a stand they sell where you can stand it up and you can network, it looks like up to 6 of those devices together, where, yeah, pretty wicked. I'm curious about everything about this. I want to know more about it. Now, my biggest concern, it supports 2 types of RAID. It'll support RAID 0 and RAID 6. So for those that have been asking about RAID 6, this device will do RAID 6. Those are the only 2 RAIDs it supports. What I don't know is if this is a hardware RAID or a software RAID. If it's a software RAID, y'all know how I feel about that. Now, I can show you a link for a 4-drive device from OWC that uses software RAID. SoftRAID from OWC, they include like a scaled-down version. I'll put a link up so you can look at all that stuff, but I'm not a fan of a software RAID. I hope this is hardware, but I don't know. And some of the descriptions about containers and being able to take the work group and hand off the work group container to another computer, that's a Mac-centric thing. So I'm not sure how they're going to implement this for the beta testing that they're going into for Linux and for Windows. I'd love to be a part of it. It's an expensive device. It's one of those devices, if you got to ask how much, forget it. But this is, as they say, iodyne, look at the name, for I/O Dynamics Pro Data. This is exactly what it says it is. This is a Pro Data storage device where it could be used in the field or in the office. And if you can put an array of these things together, what I call a RAID array, where you have access to copious amounts of data storage for a project while you're recording, while you're editing, then you put the project together and put it out for the client, whatever delivery content medium that they want to see it in, everybody's set. But to be able to have that much data in real time, what I don't get, and I know this is a Thunderbolt 3 device, what I don't get is how they do the multipath, because Thunderbolt 3, we've got one chipset, Titan Ridge, And Titan Ridge Thunderbolt 3 is 2 ports. Okay, for Thunderbolt 4 we have 2 chipsets. I'll put the links up because anybody that comes out with a chipset for Thunderbolt, it's Intel. So I'm curious because there's a PLX chip in here, because as I step back and look at this, I want to know whose PLX chip are they using. Okay, is this thing coming out of Japan or is this thing coming out of China? I don't know, but I would love to see it. And because they talk about active cooling, I know there's a fan in there. So there's DRAM for the cache. It can be replaced. There's a fan in there. It can be replaced. Looking at the pictures with the lid on and off, I don't get that. And because number 3, the main component, are the M.2 NVMe drives. So 246 and 246. I don't see anything here that looks like a fan, but all of these modules, each one of these modules has its own little heat sink and of course the thermal pad, and it's field upgradable. And to look at the other information about each one of these modules, we can go into the shop. I'll have links up to that. And in the technical documentation where they talk about a 1 terabyte and a 2 terabyte. And for those that want the definition of bits and bytes about how that all pans out, we might get into that in another video. Anyway, to be able to set this device up to support RAID 6 in a container and to support RAID 0 for like your cache or your swap files or your scratch drive, however you want to call it, this could be a phenomenal device in a group like that. Again, to reiterate, I don't get a sense of the fan, but they talk about a 1 terabyte module, and they also talk about a 2 terabyte module. And again, to reiterate, I'd like to know, will it support an 8 terabyte? It should, but that's not something they've tested it with. But it's an incredible piece of technology when you look at it. Let's take a look at some more. Now, they also have a custom shop, and let's go through this. 8 Thunderbolt ports, 4 pairs, and the first iteration of this will be 12 M.2 NVMe drives. I'm curious about the multipath performance, how they do that. Because with Thunderbolt, as I said, Thunderbolt 3, 2 ports, Thunderbolt 4, 2 chipsets. One chipset Maple Ridge, 2 ports. The other, 4 ports, but they all use 4 lanes. In other words, it's all one chipset, all on one add-in card, or if it's built on. My expectation for Thunderbolt 4, and the difference in Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 4, is bidirectional bandwidth. Okay, for Thunderbolt 4, to have access to the other chipset that gives 4 ports, I expect that to be on a laptop. I've not seen anything about an add-in card for that. Everything right now is about Thunderbolt 4, Maple Ridge. And again, this is a Thunderbolt 3 device. So I'm really curious about how they do this multipath. But as many questions as I get answered, I just have more questions. Again, I'd like to look at this device, and I'd like to be able to zoom in and figure out what the chip is they're using. This has looked like a barcode over it to obscure it. That looks like a part serial number, and they've got a number over this for I/O, which could be their exclusive chip. But I'd like to know who it is. My expectation would be Broadcom, could be Marvel, but I don't know. They don't tell. But everything you're going to learn about it is right here on their website. And I would suggest not only look at everything at the top, but look at everything at the bottom as you're trying to figure out where these guys are at. About iodyne, repair policy, contacting them. And the contact us is just a chance to log in. EndNotes is curious. There's some data there that you'll want to take a look at. But under support is just to log into an account. So that online account is something you're going to want to do to have access to the iodyne ProData cloud technology. Telemetry of the device is sent back. They don't keep any information they claim about the user or the device or the data that's there, just about how the device is configured, and it provides that telemetry so that once you sign up for that product, you get free support. And with that support, as it sends telemetry back, if the device sees a device inside of it failing, like one of the M.2 NVMe drives, they'll automatically send you one. But if you don't have access to that telemetry at that time, or in a remote place where that can't happen, of course now if you change a module from a 1 terabyte to a 2 terabyte, that means you got to change all of them out. So that's why I said I can see changing those out to 8 terabyte modules. It's PCI Express 3. We've got several brands to look at, but that would be an incredible piece of equipment to work with. If we go to the shop, we'll get some more details. But before we do that, as I mentioned, to reiterate, it could fit in a laptop bag. The one that does 12 drives. The one that does 24 drives, it's a tad bit bigger. As I mentioned, designed for repair, so you can see what their modules look like. Looks kind of like some of the heat sinks we have looked at in the past, and there is a thermal pad If you zoom in on that, you can see it. But what I'm curious about, here's a good picture. They've got a video up on Vimeo where they show 2 units set up to work together. A third option, which they mention in the custom shop, and there it is on a DIT cart, a digital imaging technician cart, and you can see how the little bracket, the foot it sits in, 2 of those mounted side by side. Anyway, they mention about rack mounting options. So that is a third option, to be able to rack mount something like that in a 19-inch rack, which I think would be fascinating. But, you know, if you want your name printed on it, that's something else they can do. But the fact that they mentioned rack mounting, I can see that. And of course, a device of that capacity, there are definite reasons for rack mounting something like that, especially in a DIT cart. It doesn't walk as easily, so I'll just leave it at that. So from a security standpoint, and it's got data encryption and talks about the keys and how they keep all that. You can read about it. I just want to cover the high points to tell you this thing is amazing. I stumbled into this and I've never seen anything like it. Let's take a look at the tech specs. Okay, 12 or 24 terabyte. This thing can expand to 576 terabytes, which is pretty wicked. This will take up to 6 devices, daisy chained, per Thunderbolt port pair. And that's kind of an interesting based on what we just talked about. Anyway, multiple daisy chains can be created on computers that provide more than one Thunderbolt host port. And of course, Thunderbolt 3, you've got 2 ports, Titan Ridge, and with Thunderbolt 4, you'll either have the Maple Ridge to reiterate 2 ports or the other chipset. I'll have the links in those that go back into Intel. Now this says performance up to 5 gigabytes bandwidth. I'll just leave it at that. The only thing I'll take issue with is the 8 40 gigabit Thunderbolt 3 ports, because Thunderbolt 3 is actually a hair over 30 gigabit. 4 upstream to 1 or more computers, 4 downstream to other devices and accessories. Cable included, Mac support, sign up for Windows and Linux beta. It has a wall wart power supply external, which is good. Gives the dimensions about 15.5 by 10 and about 1.25 inches thick. Weighs about 7.3 pounds. So, you know, size of a laptop. Can be placed horizontally, vertically, and of course we mentioned the rack mount ears. I'd be curious about the rack mount ears. Now, transactional RAID 6. I've never seen that term on RAID 6 before. And RAID 0. So again, to reiterate, your container for your data, and then of course your container for RAID 0 that could be your, again to reiterate, cache or scratch disk. Data checksums, self-healing, hardware encryption, secure enclave, NVMe Thunderbolt multipath for up to 4 paths, multi-use connectivity for up to 4 computers. Okay, I read somewhere else, but the multipath worked on 2 computers. This says 4. And of course the multi-user 4 computers. So those are some things you got to remember. This device is not shipped yet, so everything is subject to change until it does. But I would really be curious to see somebody take a look at one of these things and review it. Because again, I want to know, number one, about how they do RAID. Is this a hardware RAID or is this a software RAID? And right now I can't really tell. I looked at the interface because my first thought, and that's the reason I mentioned what OWC has with SoftRAID, I thought they might have been using a version of OWC SoftRAID because SoftRAID from OWC also works in Windows. But it's not. It's a different interface. It looks cleaner. It looks almost like they're accessing something from inside of like a unified EFI firmware. But I don't know. I'm guessing. But what they do tell us is enough to make me curious that I'd really love to test one of these. Now, we're not high enough up on the food chain, so if one of you guys get a chance out there, keep us posted on it. But since we've had so many requests about Thunderbolt storage and you guys wanted our take on it, this is something that I could have put in the other video, but this had to have a video of its own because it's partly for its searchability, but because it's just there's nothing else like it on the market. The closest thing to it, a couple of the devices with 2 drives, and then the device from OWC that'll do 4 drives. But again, to reiterate, that's software RAID, so there is nothing like this. Let's see, what else do we have? Dynamic containers with up to 15 containers per device. Storage handoff, that is a function of Macs. I'm curious to see how that would work on a PC, because what that means is someone's working in that container in that group with that data source. They can then close that out and hand that off to another computer. That's a Mac thing. So they should be able to do the same thing with PC, but I don't know. But in my work group with what I do, I need everything connected. And one user, it'll do what I need. But I do know some of you out there would be very interested in this, and that's why I had to share it with you. We'll have to see where it goes. adaptive striping and parity, automatic SSD fault management, and RAID resilvering, designed for easy self-repair of SSD modules. Supports NVMe Express and, of course, Thunderbolt, and it's Thunderbolt 3. Warranty is a 1-year standard, extended 3-year at no charge upon registering your device, and you'll want to do that because, to reiterate, that gives you access to iodyne cloud account, and because the system has telemetry, free replacement SSD modules while device is in warranty, and they'll automatically be sent to you. Total bytes written with the 12 terabyte version, the 24 terabyte version, end notes, and here's the SKUs. A RAID 0 and then RAID 6. Available capacity for the 12 terabyte, RAID 0, 12 terabytes, and available capacity for the 12 terabyte and RAID 6, 10 terabytes, which is good. And then notes for an explanation of available capacity. Safety standards, and because of the safety standards, this kind of why I wonder if this thing's made in Japan. I'm guessing. I don't know that for a fact. You know, as anything, when we're looking at new technology, as much as we know enough to know that we need to know more. Because, again, the more we realize how much we learn, we realize how little we know. That's always the case, and this is one of those devices. So the first big question is this a hardware RAID? Second big question is, where's this thing made? And the third big question, will this thing support an 8 terabyte drive? It should, but we don't know. And I guess my fourth question is going to be, I want to know what chip is on there, because it's got to be a PLX chip to do that lane switching, to make that thing work. Because whatever that system on a chip is the heart of this thing, and it's brilliant whoever's done it, because that is absolutely phenomenal. Let's take a look. We're now on the blueprint, the potential. ProData provides a versatile platform for maximizing your team's efficiency and improving productivity for even the most complex workflows. Here are some ideas to get set up on how you can use ProData and transform your setup. Okay, get connected. One or more computers with one or more Thunderbolt ports. The most anyone's going to have is 2. Most laptops are only going to have 1 Thunderbolt port. To have a laptop with 2 Thunderbolt ports, maybe, but more than likely that's going to be on the desktop. Breakthrough multipathing. I'm fascinated how that they're doing NVMe Thunderbolt multipathing. That is a high-end technology, an enterprise technology that they have in this device. I'm curious how that works. And right here it is. There's the fine print. I knew I'd seen that. You can even multipath to 2 computers at the same time. It's the fastest Thunderbolt storage for an M1 Mac with 3 times the capacity of the largest built-in SSD, which is a fact. Multi-user, hybrid NAS. This issue with NAS comes up every once in a while, and this would be the closest thing. I love NAS as a technology, network attached storage, but I don't like NAS as a device. QNAP's a good example. I'll put up a link. They've been attacked. Even Synology, which is another one of my favorites. They've had some of their devices attacked. Anything that's on the network that has outside access, there's always a risk of an attack. So using a device like this as some type of a hybrid NAS, to me makes a lot more sense, because it's not always up. It's up and it's down. And I think what they're doing is fascinating. Up to 24 terabytes. Talks about shared NFS or SMB storage with nearly unlimited daisy chain expansion. Well, 6 devices. Supports both networked time machine backup and ultra-fast backup using one ProData. Okay, I would not use that for a clone imager backup. This I would use for a project drive. There are less expensive ways to clone image and backup. And right now, as it says, available now, first units to ship January the 3rd of 2022. Free shipping and financing available. And if you go to order it, get ProData, that'll take us to the store where we can see the ProData device, the first one. You can see the price of that, extra cable, the stand, the power cable, and the SSD spare, which is available in a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte. Got their own little heat sink, and if you see the thin blue line through there, you can tell that's a thermal pad. And that looks like that uses an Allen screw to get that off. I'm curious about heat sinks since we have looked at so many, and I'm curious about the design of this heat sink. But I have not seen anything that indicates the DRAM they talk about, or anything that indicates the fan that they've talked about. Available in a 12 terabyte and a 24 terabyte capacity in 3 colors, dark gray, silver, and iodine violet. Interesting. The ProData includes, I hope a little gold monkey, 180 watt power supply, vertical stand, dark space gray, up to 2 complementary 0.7 meter Thunderbolt cables. Use the plus minus to add more cables. And those are 40 gigabit cables, which means they're good for a little over 30, just under 31 gigabit. You can order extra cables, and you can see the base price for that device. That's with 24. Wow, what a device. And the features? This is not a hard drive RAID array. This is an NVMe RAID array. ProData is the first all NVMe, all SSD Thunderbolt RAID device storage that combines multiple SSDs and multiple Thunderbolt pairs. That Thunderbolt pair term really has me curious, in a single elegant form factor. And it looks like it's machined aluminum, so it looks pretty solid. And you get an idea of size based on that laptop and that device. That looks like approximately about the size of a 15-inch laptop. Pro performance, lightning fast NVMe SSDs, a 64 gigabyte PCI Express fabric, 8 Thunderbolt ports, which they define as 4 pairs, system on a chip, that's what I want to know more about. And ProData definitely redefines Thunderbolt storage. Transparently combined to accelerate an NVMe Express storage workload. ProData is the fastest Thunderbolt storage and works with any Thunderbolt-capable computer. Well, any defines what we work with, so as long as it works with a PC, I'm interested. I don't get a sense of a fan. It must be in this area, but I do get a sense of the way the cooling runs from not top to bottom, but from left to right. So there's some kind of a cooling solution apparently in this area. Cool air is brought in from one side and hot air is expelled on the other. So there must be a couple of fans in here. Sleek form factor, right to repair, rethinking pro versatility. Here's an idea of the containers, create transactional. That term kind of piqued my interest, has me curious. Anyway, RAID 6 containers for critical work, or RAID 0 for your scratch containers or your cache files. Containers provide the storage for the computer's file system like the APFS. So I kind of wonder if this may be a software RAID. I don't know. They talk about the storage handoff. That's a Mac thing. Should be able to do that with a PC. Pro reliability, SSD lifetime. ProData's transactional RAID transparently distributes user data in parity over 12 M.2 NVMe SSDs with minimal write amplification, delivering 10 times the lifetime of a standard drive. Unlike an external drive, ProData's performance provides sustained throughput across hours of the most intense workloads without degradation. SSD Management automatically monitors. Again, telemetry is sent up to the cloud once you register. Container passwords. Add a per container password to restrict access to particular users or computers in a work group. Share common device password across multiple containers for desktop setups. See, that looks a lot like software, but that could be something in their firmware. I don't know how they work that. I would think that iodyne would have some mechanism available to upgrade the firmware in this device, but I don't know that for a fact. But you would think they'd want to be able to tweak that, to tweak performance, especially if it's a system on a chip. So new technology is something we had to share. I hope you guys enjoyed this because this is not like anything we've seen. And even though in the last video where we talked about portable storage options, external portable storage, this is kind of at the ultimate of external portable storage, but it's not a shipping product yet because nobody's had a chance to look at it. But coming in January, it's supposed to be shipping. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I want to thank you for watching. This is BuildOrBuy. My name is Gil Boyd. We're on to the next video. We're out.